Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of the No Vision Internet Radio Show. We are streaming, so we're going to stream this video on Facebook, Twitter, and of course, Facebook. And just programming note before we go any further, just before I forget, actually, September, March the 9th, we're going to have Mr. County Judge Ricardo Saminego. I would call him Richard, but it's Ricardo Saminego. We're going to have him March the 9th. And then, but today we're going to have a guest that really I've known for a while, and I never thought she'll be on this end as a candidate on the show. You know, as people know, we've done mayors, we've done Congress people, and now we have more important Ms. Marquez. And how you doing, Ms. Marquez?
I'm good, George. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Like I said, I've known her for a bit, folks, and you know, one thing that I've done and I've been proud of advocacy for many years. And I've, been through this and done that and whatever. And there's people I meet on the way, like Mike Palamat and Josue Rodriguez and Christy Lai and all that. But some people that kind of stick, like, you know what, they're really out there to help people. And Ms. Marquez is one of those. And she's going to talk about her platform and her campaign. But I want people to understand that I rarely, and I've been asked, folks, actually I was asked recently to endorse a candidate, and I did. But it's rare that I'll do it on the show. So this is the first, this is exclusive. I'm going to endorse Ms. Marquez for State of Education, Texas State of Board of Education District Number 1. And so by saying that, Ms. Marquez, can you just kind of inform people or update them what actually a State Board of Education member does?
Yeah, definitely. And think you threw me off a little, George, because you say such kind things, and I want to respond to.
Oh, it gets worse. Don't worry. I'm starting at nice at the beginning. Not really. No, but first I want to tell people what the board does, and then I want people to, your background and whatnot. But I think this way, if we tell people what the board does in regards to the whole state, because I thought I'm not gonna lie to you folks. I'm like, what do they do? Do they make like the cafeteria, the menu on the cafeteria? Not really. But the thing is, so she's going to let you know, Ms. Marquez is going to know why it's important to vote for this post. Look, at the end of the day, our goal here on the show, like I said, we've had many, I've done this for many, many years, from Congress people to Escobar to Leeser to you name it. And we always tell you the same message. It's up to you how you want to vote. We give you the candidates and their platform, and of course, like this one, like this particular office, I really I'm not too sure what they do. So, can you kind of tell us what they do, ma'am?
Yeah, definitely. So again, thank you, George, for having me. I really appreciate it. I too never thought that I would be one of your candidates that you would be interviewing.
I know.
But so hello everybody. My name is Laura Marquez, and I am running for State Board of Education in District 1. And I'm one of 3 Democratic primary candidates running right now in this primary election. And so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. But again, like what George is saying, I share that passion with George about community education and trying to get people to have as much awareness as possible about what our leaders do, and then trying to take the step further to make sure that we're holding our leaders accountable. And that's something that I believe as a voter, and that's something that I hold with me as a candidate in office now. So the State Board of Education is a 15-member governing body that is responsible for establishing the policies and standards for our entire K-12 Texas public school system. And they are elected members. So for our State Board of Ed, they're the highest elected body in our state. Our Texas Education Commissioner is an appointed role that currently is held by Mike Morath. He is appointed by the governor. And so this elected body of the State Board of Education is really where we as citizens have the strongest voice in what goes on in our public school system. And so really quick, some of the main responsibilities of the State Board of Ed. One of the first things is they establish our curriculum. So they define the curriculum, they define what students learn in every grade and in every subject, starting from K to 12, as I mentioned. They also review any kind of proposed instructional materials. And then they, of course, with input from stakeholders, they review those, and they're responsible for selecting and identifying the materials that your children, my children, are using in their schooling. They also manage the Texas Permanent School Fund. And the Texas Permanent School Fund is one of the main sources and the permanent source of funding that our state has established to fund our education system. So the board as a body, they oversee that. They make board appointments to special school districts or military reservations, and they, excuse me, they also give final review for the State Board for Educator certification. So for teachers, a lot of professions have a governing body, a licensing body. And so for teachers, it's the State Board for Educator certification. And so the State Board of Ed is responsible for reviewing any kind of rule changes or different things regarding the State Board for Educator certification. And then one of the final things that the State Board of Ed is responsible for is to review new charter school applications. And that's an important thing right now in the discussion. Not only are they responsible for reviewing, but they also have the authority to veto any charter school applications. And we can dive into that more probably as we have this conversation and I talk about my platform. But one of the reasons why State Board of Education is so important is because the decisions that they're making really are impacting our students and teachers daily in the classroom. This is a student's life from Monday through Friday. And so these decisions are very important. And we all know how important education is, and having access to education and access to equitable education. So these decisions that are made on the board have a lot of ramifications for our students and our teachers and the rest of our education community as a whole.
What's the term length of when you get elected?
So the role that I'm seeking and the election that I'm seeking will be a 4-year term, and it would start with in 2022, or sorry 2023. So
next year.
Getting through this primary, if that were to happen, then whoever wins the Democratic primary candidacy will then advance to the general election in November, and then the new role will take place after that.
Oh, okay. Now, so you named all the tasks or the responsibilities of the board. What made you now? I know why, but what made you, so that the voters will know? You're talking to the voters now. What made you run or seek this office? Because you're going to walk into some heated discussions and pressure and whatnot. So what made you, Ms. Marquez, to say, you know what, I'm going to step into this pot of oil boiling grease? What was it? Was it like a singular thing? Was it a multitude of things that made you say, you know what, enough is enough? So what's that? Why are you running for this board or this position? There's a lot,
and I think about this a lot, and you will be familiar with what I'm about to say, George. But in just my life period, and in the profession that I went into, I have always been very passionate about education. I've always been on the surrounding education, trying to create access, and I know in my personal beliefs that education is very important, not only because I'm a mom of 3 public school students. I get the honor to work with families who are trying to access public education for their child who has a disability. But there's one very important quote from a very good friend of mine, and you might recognize this quote, George. is a friend that I met in this journey, and he says, "No participation, no progress."
I
And
have that trademark, by the way. You owe me
that
$5.
is your words. Those are the words that I heard from you in this journey of being a community advocate. And when when you say it, I've believed that since the beginning. I think there's a lot of things.
You know why I'm glad you said that, and then just kind of harp on that. The reason why it's so important in Ms. Back is because you've been involved very much, and folks, this is going back, a while, but what makes it important is that people that participate, there is progress. When I say no participation, no progress, it's because if we don't participate, whatever it is, in life, marriage, in this or that, that's why I would say the pursuit of happiness, you're not going to progress. And what I mean by that is, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. A little bit off topic here, but 2 years ago when the pandemic started, there were a lot of gaps in services for individuals with disabilities, going from vaccination to testing and vice versa. And accessing those information and services was critical. And there was no action. So we came together. When I say we, me, Ms. Marquez, Josue Rodriguez, Diana Solano, Kimberly Gallego. I always say her last name wrong. I'm sorry. Mike Palamad. We all came together and pushed this agenda of having equal access to the city, the state, and the county. Now, folks, it was many hours, right, Ms. Marquez? Sitting down in meetings, talking to people, but you had to participate to progress. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you said that, because that's one thing I always try to push people to do. People, especially with disabilities, we need to step up and make our voices heard. And that's why it's important that what Ms. Marquez said, you notice all those little talking points. Those are important things that impact us, no matter what. Okay, you could be parents, you could be grandparents, because sometimes abuelita has to take care of the kids, and that's why it's important that if you feel that Ms. Marquez is the vote for you, which I say I endorse, do it. Don't just sit at home and, no, ¿por qué? No. Do you hear that a lot, Ms. Marquez? Do you hear people say that? Like, what for? Nothing's going to change, or ¿por qué? But I think what you're doing, Ms. Marquez, stepping into that realm and saying, I want to do this. That's a rare person to do that. You know what I mean? Because not many people want to participate. Well, look at our voter turnout. But I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Ms. Malcolm, but you brought up a good point about participation. And before I forget, I think I didn't allow you to do this. Ms. Marquez, no, this is what I mean, folks. I forgot. Okay, I'm visually impaired. I forget. She said, George, can I introduce myself, what I'm wearing, how I look? And I'm like, wow, you know what? Coming from a blind man, you think I would know that by now? But Ms. Marquez told me that. So I'll let you do that, Ms. Marquez. I should have done that at the very beginning. Go ahead, ma'am. Sorry.
It's all right. We're comfy in a friendly conversation. I learned a lot, and I still have a lot to learn. But I have learned a lot about being accessible and being inclusive through what George has taught me. And because he is a friend in my life, and it's important to me to try to be, just as inclusive as possible. And I mess up, all the time, but it's about being able to be corrected and learn. We're all students. We're all always learning. So yes, I did, one of the things about having a commitment to try to be as accessible as possible, and I learned this from George, is to give an image description of yourself. And I think we saw this a lot during the pandemic. I saw it a lot in a lot of the meetings. Some meetings where there was more, I guess I would say, aware people, we would do image descriptions. So I'll do my image description. For anybody that would benefit. So I'm a Latina with short brown hair. It's kind of shoulder length. And I'm wearing light green glasses, and I'm wearing a dark green half zip hoodie. And I have a virtual background behind me, which has my campaign logo. And my campaign logo says Laura Marquez for State Board of Education, District 1. and incorporated in my campaign logo is a graphic that is supposed to look like an open book under my name, and that was important to me. Not only because books are a symbol of education, but I think it was kind of symbolic to have the my name coming out of this book is like trying to kind of promote this kind of knowledge. So and the background is like a light peachy orange. But yes, that's my image description.
And mine, folks, you can't see me because Miss Marquez is on the screen, but just imagine Brad Pitt with black hair. Not really. But the thing is, I think what it is, Miss Marquez, when it comes to public education, is that folks take it for granted. What I mean by that is, you have to understand, from kindergarten all the way to graduation, these kids, these individuals, these future generations are being provided information that builds their foundation, that builds like you, like me and you. We went to school, we learned all this stuff. Now from there we spawn into other stuff. Like me, I love history. I'm a huge history fan, and like you, Miss Marquez, what you've done, and because. By the way, I haven't asked you for your background. I know you're a social worker and whatnot, but tell people why you, Ms. Marquez, are a good candidate for this board, and I think you are from your background.
I have a couple of things that I think are in my background that make me kind of a well-rounded candidate, I would say. I worked for 7 years as a paraprofessional in the public education system. And I was a paraprofessional in a classroom working with students with disabilities. So I provided their special education and support services day in and day out to these students. So I was trained on their programming. I delivered, whatever services that were outlined in their individual education program plan. And that's why I came into this world, I guess you would say, the world of disability, and being aware and trying to do better. And after that work, I went back to school. I did that work for a while, and I had kids and I raised my family. But then I had the opportunity to go back to school, and I decided that I wanted to go back to school for social work because I wanted to still work with kids, still help kids, but do it in a way that I could advocate for students that I saw or that I observed that weren't always getting the same access to education as other students. And I saw it, as somebody who worked in the school, the difference between students with disabilities and students with severe disabilities, and then the students with disabilities who spoke Spanish or their families spoke Spanish. There was a lot of inequity that I observed for that time working in school. And so it was my motivation to go back to finish my own education and pursue social work. So I got my bachelor's of social work in 2018. And then I went on to get my master's of social work in 2019 here at UTEP, so University of Texas at El Paso. I'm very proud to be not only a product of public K-12 schools. I went to Isla Del schools, and I graduated from Eastwood High School. And then I went on to public community college. I was a student at EPCC, and I have an associate's degree from EPCC, which I think is a really great opportunity for students in our community to get a good foundation in their education, and that was right for me. And then I have my degree from an amazing public university. And so everything about me and what I have lived in my life is public education. And
let me tell you this, Ms. Marquez, and I'm glad you mentioned what you've been talking about. And I want people to understand it. Coming from a person that's grown up with a disability, being in the public school system, for me, it's very crucial to have someone your voice on the Texas State Education Board. The reason why is because you understand, or you've seen it when it comes to the gaps. What I mean by that, folks, is you got to understand. someone with a disability or a student, I'm not going to put you on the spot, Miss Marquez. I don't like special needs. For some reason, I just don't like that. Because my thought on that is, when do you transition from special needs to an adult? I'm 40, 50 years old. I don't have special needs. I have needs.
Yeah.
Pizza, stuff like that. But the point is, growing up, folks, you have to understand that a kiddo with a disability, doesn't matter if they're hard of hearing, if they have dyslexia, if they're blind, if they have autism, and they're on the spectrum, they have daily barriers to go with. Then you introduce them to a school system that I've heard of, and you probably have too, Ms. Marquez, of all the gaps. They're not doing this for my kid. They're not doing that for my kid. So what does the kid do? That doesn't build that foundation for them to be a productive adult. So what they do is stay home, and I'm not going to school. I'm going to quit. What for? They don't care about me. So I think having someone like you, Ms. Marquez, on that board is crucial, because you could bring that idea, or you bring up a different perspective that's not the everyday conversation when it comes to students with disabilities that want to be part of the school curriculum and not feel like, oh, I'm special. Because, folks, and I'm going to tell you this, people, I want to get a lot of backlash. We are not supposed to be special. And the reason I tell you this, because a lot of people call me, because, my advocacy, the ADA, the ADA, the ADA. Folks, the ADA is meant to be part of for you to get equal access. That's it. Just because I'm blind, I don't get special treatment. I should not. And kids with disabilities, when I say special needs, is that they need their specific needs dealt with. For example, I'm blind, so my needs are not going to be the same as a student next to me that's blind. It's not a cookie cutter position, or it works for George, it's going to work for John. No. And that's why I think with you, Ms. Marquez, having the education that you have and the experience working, with people or kids with disabilities and people, I think that helps. It helps you be more of a open-minded when it comes to, because I'm going to tell you this, Ms. Marquez. I've spoken to a lot of people that are quote-unquote educators or on school boards, and they don't get it. And they're on actual school boards. Okay, like we have Pablo Barada from SISD. He gets it. We talk a lot. Freddie Cleo, I don't know. He kind of disappeared. I don't know what happened to him. But the thing is, that's what we want people. We want people on these boards, especially the state board, to come from where we come from. Like Ms. Marquez said, she's from El Paso. Even though she went to Eastwood, I'm not going to hold that against her. But that's all right. But maybe before going on my tangent here, Ms. Marquez, for you, what are the top priorities that you feel that need to be addressed as of now, or haven't been addressed, and you feel that, I think it's time for this to be talked about at the state level? What can you bring to the table?
Some of the things that I really want to bring from my perspective, for sure, at the forefront of all of it is like you said, like keeping disability in the conversation, keeping students with disabilities in the conversation. And I really feel like even in my work that I do on a daily basis, I work at an agency that provides services to children with disabilities and their families. But I'm in any given day, I'm in a meeting or a work group with other groups. And even then, disability isn't always part of the conversation. And so that is something that's really important to me. If I get the opportunity to serve on the board, is make sure that, disability and students with disabilities, it's part of the conversation, and that, that students with disabilities have a voice. That is very important to me, and working with every voice, like our education system, it's an ecosystem. We talk about, and that's a model that I've learned in my schooling, and it applies to education. And there's so much that's part of an education system: students, teachers, other education professionals working in the schools, parents, community members, so we all have a role to play in education. And so it's really important to always try to have those voices present. And in that respect, some of the things that I hope to continue from, our current state board of education rep, which is Georgina Perez, like she has been, she has served in really great ways and has really done a lot to partner with the community. And there's things that I want to continue. And then there's things that are my own flair that I want to bring. And so definitely one of the first things is kind of pushing back against this agenda that we see to privatize our school system. And so we see that with things like charter schools popping up, and this is where I come from, this perspective working in special education advocacy. Charter schools, they have a bad rap. They do, because they've done, just to put it simply, there's been some shady things that have happened with charter schools. And a lot of that is because there's very little accountability. There's very different standards. Charter schools are considered public schools, so they get taxpayer money, but they don't have to follow a lot of the same kind of accountability that our local public schools do. And in the respect of special education, I've heard families that have gone to some of these, charter schools, and they've been told, oh, we don't have to follow the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We don't have to provide special education services, which is false. They should. But the thing that we see with charter schools is that they pick and choose their students. And so when they start touting things like 100% graduation rates and high performance, that's great for the students that are there. But what about the students that didn't get to be at the table, right? Didn't get to be a part of those schools. And so with charter schools, it's created a system, a branch system where it's unequal. And you'll be familiar with this, because this was one of the things, George, with like Section 504 and with the passing of the Individuals with Disabilities Act, which is separate. Our government wanted to keep people with disabilities separate, but not equal, and no. That's what is kind of happening with charter schools. It's created a separate and very unequal system, and it's become unequal for the most marginalized. And I feel like students with disabilities, and then when you factor in students with disabilities who are African American or Latinx or their English language learners, all of those intersecting identities that students with disabilities have, they have experienced some of the most marginalization in our school system. And so it's kind of continuing with charter schools. So that's one of my main things, is to keep that at the forefront and keep light on that, hold charter schools accountable, and make sure that we're really doing right by our kids and our families, because at the end of the day, they just need access to an equitable education.
Exactly. And that's I think that's what's crucial nowadays, especially now that's the technology, because I'm older than you. But back in the day, we didn't have internet, we didn't have this, we didn't have that. But now it's a lot different, where the kids, I remember back in the day, I could still see, so it must have been 2005, 2006, and my cousin, she was in fifth grade, and she's like, hey, help me with my math. I looked at her, I'm like, well, what is she taking? Physics? What the heck is this? And she was in fourth grade. And I'm like, wow, that's really progressed from when I was younger, going to school. But then you're there go. And folks, not everything's about disabilities, but you have to understand that a child, a kiddo that has a disability, sometimes they don't have the confidence. Then like when I was younger, you separate us, you put us in separate rooms, and people walk by and look in the window. I felt like I was in the zoo. I'm serious. People walk by and look at me looking like, ooh, look at him, the big old monkey. And the thing is, for me, I saw that. I felt it, and I'm looking at him like, why are they looking in, making faces? Why are they doing that? As you know, kids are mean as it is.
Yeah.
So now when you put the education platform into it, now that you have technology, it should make it easier for all kids to learn at an equal level. But that's not true sometimes, unfortunately, in 2022. But I hope with you coming on board, hope you get elected. When's the general election or the primaries for this race or for this March what?
So right now we're in the middle of early voting. So we're in the first week of early voting. It started on February 14th, and it'll run till February 25th. And then election day is March 1st, Tuesday, March 1st.
Okay, it's March 1st.
And in El Paso, this is something great, and I applaud our county elections office and Lisa Weiss, who has done really. She's done a lot, I think, to try to make voting really accessible. In El Paso, for early voting, you can vote in any early voting place. And actually for election day, you can vote anywhere. And it used to be where you had to go to your precinct and especially on election day, but now you can vote anywhere. And so there's Bassett Center. Go to Bassett. Go to the mall, go shopping, and go vote. Please.
And if you know anybody has a mobility impediment and they can't get to the voting site, for example, like my mom, when she would rest her. So when we would take her, she would stay in the car, and then we would tell them, you know what, she wants to vote. They'll come to curbside voting. And then people that are visually impaired, every voting site should have a accessible machine that talks, or voting machine, I guess that's what you call it, that talks. And the thing is, so that's what I'm saying about technology, is now is making it easier for us to be equal when it comes to, like myself, who's visually impaired or blind. But that doesn't matter if you don't vote. All this discussion that we've been doing, Ms. Marquez, doesn't matter if you don't go out there and vote. And that's why it's crucial, folks. We complain about this, about that, or school, or this, but yet no participation, no progress. Simple as that. Go out there and vote. And those, like you said, Ms. Marquez, you go anywhere you want right now and vote, even with general election. I know right now there's, two places near where we live where I can go vote. And the thing is, go out. Oh, by the way, Ms. Marquez, if someone wants to donate, can they do that to your campaign?
Yes, absolutely. So my campaign is very grassroots, and I definitely would appreciate any contributions, and that's one of the things, it's not easy to run a campaign, and I think that's unfortunate because there's a lot of people that I know that can and should be in office. And it's unfortunate that, it's such an expensive endeavor and expensive process that it becomes a barrier for a lot of people to be able to run for office and hold office. But yeah, I think one of the best ways is to visit I have a website. It's a real simple website, but it's Laura, Laura, FORTX, and the word education.com. And really, if you find me on Facebook too, Facebook is where I'm trying to put a lot of information. I try to put some information about the SBOE, and you'll find information about who has endorsed me. And there's also a link there to go to my donation page. And really just, voting is really important. It's something that is, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat that our state has done some things to make voting very difficult, and our state has done some things to make participation very difficult. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame the people that say, well, what is the point? I feel bad for somebody that has gotten to that point, because our state has made it really hard to participate. But really, if you can, and it's really important, take your family, go, I always try to make it a family event. I love to take my kids with me to vote because I've always I want them to be there and have their mom voting and to be a part of that is really important. We all voted as a family on the first day of early voting, and so that's something that's really I take pride in that, and I make it a family affair. You know, if I don't go with my kids, I or my mom or my husband, you know, those are the people that I like to go and kind of exercise this right that we have.
Yep. And I'd
Um,
like to give you props there, Ms. Marquez, about this has been a thing of mine for many, many moons of letting politicians understand the importance of making their media posts, their paper materials, everything accessible for those who are visually impaired or blind, and those who have a reading issue or disability. And I applaud you. You've done a lot in regards to uh, um, image descriptions on your posts. I have to applaud you on that. It's not one of those, well, okay, I do it for a week and then I go back to normal. You've been consistent. I appreciate that because in the long run, what that does, that allows people, like for example, when Mr. Saminego won the race last time, it was like literally like 20, less than 30 people, if I'm not mistaken, or 300 people, I'm sorry. And what I'm trying to say is every vote counts. So when you include, I'm talking to the politicians that watch this, include us. We're going to vote. Trust me. I'm going to tell my friends, you know what? Check out Miss Marquez. Look at her post. That alone would trigger some people to vote for her. But since I know her, that's beside the point. But what I'm saying is, you're going to say, oh, wow, it's like going to somewhere where like, oh, wow, that was a nice restaurant. I'm going to tell my friends. Same thing here. Miss Marquez, she makes her posts accessible. You know what? I'm going to look into her. How is she really? And that's what I mean. Inclusion, like a good friend of ours. Did you know Mr. Lara?
I didn't ever
Oh,
have the opportunity to
mm.
meet him, no, but I knew of his work for
And he
sure.
was always has this saying, I want to mess it up. Inclusion is the solution. You know, he would always say that when we do our protests and we'd be blocking doorways. Say, I've been there, I've done that. But the point is, you know, Ms. Mike, I appreciate you doing that because that really helps make that your campaign exclusive. And also, folks, she didn't want me to tell this on air, but in regards to donations, she also takes food stamps. Okay, so just to let you know that. Just kidding. So
You're gonna
before we
get
go,
me in trouble.
right, a scandal. No,
No,
Paso Times.
it's an El
Um,
Paso Times tomorrow.
that Ms. Marcus, before we leave, what do you want people to know about you before they make that crucial vote regarding this position of the state education, or this? I always say it wrong. Texas State Board of Education District One.
um, I think like the thing that I want people to know about me more than anything is I don't I don't want to be like cheesy or but I'm really just doing this because I don't want to do it for I'm not doing it for me. I want to do it because I have a great honor to be working in this community and know so many groups, organizations, know other leaders and advocates like you, George. And I think that, if it wasn't one of my colleagues that I knew that I supported, like I can still be, a beacon for making sure their voices are heard. I'm definitely not, in this to advance what I think is best for public education because I'm always a firm believer that we are lifelong students. There's a quote, when you stop learning, you're not living anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't always know everything. And being the smartest person in the room is not what's important. Being the person in the room that will listen to others is what I value and what is really important to me. And I'm not perfect, but I definitely always come to a space trying to learn and listen to others, listen to really hear what people are saying instead of listening so that I can just give my response. That's something that's really important to me. And I want to be able to partner with, students, with teachers, with parents and community members. And I think that I am really uniquely positioned to be able to do that, being a parent, having past experience in the classroom, having experience working with the community right now. I can kind of be a bridge, to some of these harder conversations that sometimes occur, that might be heated, and it's really something that I hope I can do is just be a bridge for the community to get more involved, be a bridge for teachers to have more of a presence and voice in developing curriculum because they're the ones in the classrooms, be a bridge for students having a strong voice because they're the ones that are learning the content and they need to be in charge of their education also. At underlying all of that, something I learned from you, George, and I always keep with me when we were doing, our classes and talking about special education is something you shared with me is the biggest barrier that I experienced, you shared is society's views of what disability is. It's not, of course there's barriers to accessibility, but all of that could be changed if society would just have an open mind to have a different view of what disability is. And I think that what we're seeing right now in society, a lot of this division could be solved by just having representation in our curriculum from a young age. And I see it with my own kids because the work I do, I talk to my kids all the time about disability, about people with disabilities and what they are capable of, and how it's just a different way of being, a different way of doing something. And so my kids have been exposed for a long time. And so when they come across kids with disabilities in their classrooms, they're very open-minded. They want to be friends. And when we were growing up, George, you experienced it firsthand as somebody as a student who had a disability, who you felt isolated and you felt excluded. But I remember growing up and I didn't see a lot of the kids with disabilities, I didn't see them and I wasn't exposed. And I think that's one of the main things that we are doing wrong by our kids is we're not exposing them to the experiences of other communities, whether it's a disability community or, the Black community, Indigenous community, Latino community. We're not exposing them to those leaders, those stories, to have something to look at that is reflective of who they are. And when we take that away from our kids, then we're really robbing them of the opportunity to have this open mind, because they're going to grow up to be the leaders and they're going to design the buildings. They're going to design the curriculum. They're going to design the technology. And if they learn from an early age that it's really important to make things accessible, because this might not be something that works for somebody with a disability, then they'll value it when they end up being the ones that are leading our society. Yep. So I think that's something that's really important to me to be a loud voice on.
Thank you for that, because that means you're right, because what happens a lot is the visuals, the cues, right? Someone in a wheelchair, or someone has a hearing aid, someone that, like myself, uses a white cane or a seeing eye dog. No matter what it is, I had a good friend of mine that just recently passed away, Burns Taylor. He graduated from UT Austin and USC. Okay, this man was very smart. And when I would tell people, "Have you seen Burns?" Yeah, he graduated from USC and UT Austin. Really? Their voice, really? I'm like, why do you do that? If you're just a regular person, I tell you, "Oh, okay, cool." And so, at the end of the day, it's people like Ms. Marquez, myself, Bonnie Perez, I'm forgetting people. I went blank on people that they involve their kids in, well, going back to that discussion of kids with disabilities. And you know what I've seen, Ms. Marquez? I've seen 3 examples of this, where the kids are introduced to other kids with different abilities, and I've seen them grow up. The quote unquote normal kids, I guess you want to call them, or the able kids. And I see them grow up different. I see them grow up with an understanding, with empathy of, you know what? Yeah, okay, I get it. Okay, cool. Let's work with it. where if you're not exposed all your life and you run into somebody, you're like, oh, you have cooties. I'm going to get it. I tell people it's not contagious. You're not going to get blind because you're around me. Okay? And the thing is, I think it's very important for us to keep having that discussion, even when you go to the state level, hopefully, Ms. Marquez, that conversation of inclusion for everyone, from minorities to people from other countries, like people from Mexico that come over, very smart people. They're not all bad. They're not all stupid. They're all not grabbing from the society, from our welfare system. They're productive people, just like people with disabilities. We're not all on food stamps. We're not all grabbing SSI. We're productive members of society. And more importantly, I'm talking to those people with disabilities. You need to be examples, not inspirations. I hate when people, and this is my personal thing, people, oh, you're an inspiration. I'm an example. Just like you, Miss Marquez, of you being Latina. You're an example of what Latinas should do and can do, not because, oh, she's a female, she's Latina, she's smart. I've heard that. And it's sad to hear that. And this is only 2 years ago when I heard that from someone that was running for office, folks. I'm not going to say who it was. I was shocked. I looked at my wife and I'm like, did he just say that out loud? You serious? And so the point is, we still have those perceptions, those bigotries nowadays. And I applaud you, Ms. Marquez, for coming forth and being honest. Being honest about why you're running for this office. You're not going to gain anything from this office. You're going to learn, right? For sure. I guarantee that.
Learning.
Yeah. So
I've learned a lot already.
I hope when you win, you come back and be a regular member. Like I invite everyone else. Pablo Varela has taken that option. He's been on the show like 4 times already. He's from the SISD, and we invite people to come on. You want to come on and talk about your, whatever it is, your campaign, or bring a story up. It doesn't have to be
important updates.
Important updates. Come on. I'll have you on. I'll give Ms. Marquez. And the thing is, Ms. Marquez, if somebody wants to make contact with you. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Echo, stop. Sorry about that, folks. If somebody wants to make contact with you, Ms. Marquez, how can they do that?
So I have a Gmail address, and like I said, my campaign is very small. So if you email me, you will get a response from me, and I will, I definitely want to be as accessible as possible. So my email address is all one word. It's Laura, so LAURA, for FOR, Texas, TEXAS, education, EDUCATION @gmail.com. So Laura for Texas education @gmail.com.
Okay.
And
I'm like, she can't spell education. Mira,
I
she
know,
wants
I'm
to be in the board.
I'm like, oh my gosh, don't let me not spell
No
it
worries.
right.
When I took many years ago when I took my SATs, I was so nervous. I sat down and I was like, UTEP. And then I look, and this is when I could still see. So I look at do they still use those bubble things, the bubble fill-in things?
The
what I'm talking
Scantons? Yeah, I think they do.
Okay,
yeah.
So I'm looking down and I'm like, the first thing, name. Folks, I forgot my name. I'm like, what's my name? What's my name? So I'm like, crap. But anyways, just Ms. Marquez is so funny. Folks, before we started the conversation, she was telling me, man, I don't think I want to be able to go 30 minutes. We've been on for an hour.
I know, we've been talking for a long time.
Because it's so engaging, this conversation. But reach out to Ms. Marquez. If you could donate, please help her. I mean, it takes money, folks. It really takes money, especially nowadays in these kind of campaigns, to help out if you can. And one more last time, Ms. Marquez, you give that email one more time, please?
It's Laura for Texas education @gmail.com.
Okay. Well, folks, go ahead.
I'll do when you go live, George. I'll comment in the video with my links and stuff. That way, whoever watches the video, they'll see the links there. So once you post the video, I'll do that.
So, folks, we'll like I said, we streaming on Facebook. On Facebook. Oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, by the way, Ms. Marquez, do you know what? Did you hear that Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are gonna merge?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it could be called
I probably did, but I don't pay attention.
It could be called your Twit Face.
Oh my God.
Anyway, that's why I kind of messed it up. Anyway, we're going to be streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So, and March the 9th, we're going to have county judge Ricardo Saminego. I almost said Richard again. Ricardo Saminego. But if you want to be part of the discussion, you can always call 1-800-219-6663. That's 1-800-219-6663. Or email info@novisioninternetradio.com. And by the way, just so tomorrow we will be having our my co-host. He's all the way from Cincinnati, Ohio, Quentin. We'll be doing a tech show. But Miss Marquez, thank you, ma'am, for coming on. You're more welcome to come on anytime you want. And it was kind of hard getting her on board, folks. I think she was avoiding me. But anyway. But I
Pretty lies, George.
I know. But you know what, Miss Marquez, I do appreciate you coming on because I think it's important for your voice to be heard regarding your platform and why it's important to vote, especially nowadays when it's so easy now, right? Because back in the day, in the 20s or 30s, we had not horses, but cars that not everybody had transportation. But now everybody has access to voting, and take advantage of that, folks. But anyway, Ms. Marquez, thank you, my friend. Hope you do win and come back as a regular host or guest regarding updating the people regarding the state level, what's happening with the state level. And so remember, folks, when is the general election or the primaries again? Oh, March 1st.
Election day is March 1st, but you can vote now until the 25th.
The 25th of February. So vámonos, gente. Vamos. You have 7 more days, folks. Come on. If my lazy butt could do it, you could go vote, folks. Okay. All right, everyone. See you next time. Miss Marquez, thank you so much. And later. Bye-bye.